Good morning. Good morning. Go ahead and take a seat. Don't leave. Do not leave. Under any circumstance, do not leave. You have to, lock those doors or put a barrier in front of them. Beth, fight anybody that tries to leave. All right. Hey. This is... I told John Mitchell before service this morning that I don't know if I've ever been more prepared and less ready to teach a Bible class. So this is going to be a bunch of information, and I hope that it makes any sense at all. And here we go. The next 2 weeks finish out the book that we've been going through, which is The Tangible Kingdom. The last 8 chapters are split into 2 different groups. The first one is Living Out, which is what we'll be talking about this week. Next week we'll be Inviting In, which I believe Rod Diller is going to be teaching to finish up this book, and then there will be a new Bible class series after that. Living Out is the missional habits of Christians. Inside the idea of living out, there are 4 specific habits that the author wants us to take a look at and to focus on in our pursuit of missional living. The first one that we're going to talk about this morning is leaving. Leaving. And I don't want to use the phrase get out of your comfort zone because it's like that on steroids times 1,000. So here we go. Change is very hard. Change is hard even when things are good. This is a personal note. I'm starting a brand new job tomorrow. It's still with, I've been with Chesapeake. I'm still with Chesapeake. But I will no longer be working nights and weekends. And yes, it is a glorious, it is a fantastic thing. Yes. Ziana is more than happy that I get to participate in bedtime each night. Instead of leaving that with her for a week at a time. Yes. Because if you have kids, bedtime is the worst. With the change that is positive, I get off at Friday at 11 or 12. I only work a half day on Friday. There's a lot of positives to this new job. It's different. It's a different team of people. It's a completely different job tomorrow. I'm going to go and sit in an office that is empty. That it will be empty except for 5 pictures that we bought the picture frames for yesterday, and I will be printing out the pictures today. That's how unprepared for this I am. I'm going to go sit in an office with other people for, 2 or 3 weeks and have them explain to me all the different things that I get to do now. It's hard. It's going to be a gigantic change. It's really good. Change is very hard. Leaving our focus, what we have been focusing on for so long, personally, is hard. This is Jesus' statement in Matthew 28, and it does read exactly how I wanted it to be. Do you guys see that second line? It says, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy. Do you guys get the picture of this? It starts with go. Go. And while you're going, make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you, and surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. Go. We're very good at coming here. And obviously I'm literally preaching to the choir. We have a hard time going. Because going means a lot of problems that we'll get to talk about a little bit. Leaving is about replacing our personal or Christian activities for time spent building relationships with people in our surrounding culture. And that sounds weird because to say, well, I'm not going to be able to make the small group tonight because I'm going to fill in the blank. And it's very purposeful. It's very, you are missional. You have a purpose in building this relationship. But I'm going to forego whatever it is in order to build this relationship. And that's hard for us because we say, growing up, Church of Christ, Western Oklahoma, if the doors were open, we were there. My dad's the preacher out there still, and if the doors were open, we were there. And to say, maybe that's not the most important place you could be is a hard switch for us. But if I need to be with someone else for whatever reason, then I need to be with someone else. That doesn't affect me. That doesn't affect whether, I've made this joke a million times. I don't have to come here to punch my heaven card to make sure that I've got enough punches when I die to get in. That's not the purpose. Missional, Christian, Christ-like behavior takes us to the people. We have a pretty bad habit of doing church in here and living the same as everyone else for the rest of the week, when in fact it should be that we are doing church out there and then coming here on a Sunday morning to regroup, to refocus, to edify, sort of like just a get-together. Hey, how's things going for you? Do you guys need anything? Okay, break. Go out and get at it again. And we use this time as our, as long as I was here, then I've filled my quota, my God quota for the week. I can move on. And there's a lot of people that feel like that. There's a lot of people that feel like Sunday morning, Sunday night, maybe a small group, as long as I'm doing those things, I'm fulfilling my Christian duties. And we've got to build more than that. I'm not saying that being here is bad at all. It's great. It's the best. But we've got to learn that there is much more to leaving than just coming. Yes, sir.
I think we also hear that and are afraid that if we preach that, we're going to give the message to people who just come, that you don't even have to do that either.
Right.
And we need to move so far beyond that people see us in the going, and they see that is as strong of a part of our culture as the gathering.
Correct.
And our going needs to provide the context for why we gather.
Right. I don't know if everybody heard that, but for people that just come, they need to see that our going is our focus, and that to be a part of our group, they need to be willing to also go. And that sounds like we're being an exclusive group, but we're not, because we definitely want you to be a part of the group. But at the same time, to be a part of the group, we've got to have you change your mindset a little bit, and we've got to refocus on everybody going. Here's some very good examples of leaving, and these are, you'll understand kind of as we get through these. The first one is letting people live with you in your home for an extended period of time. The author says, what you're doing is you're intentionally giving up your space, your time, and your comfort, and possibly resources for the sake of connecting with sojourners. We've had people stay with us for small amounts of time. I say small, 3 months was the longest. And I mean, like, they're just in your house. That's it. They are in your house. There's nothing you can do about that. You agreed at the beginning, they are in your house. And that's fantastic. And I mean, like, that's a big sacrifice, because normally our house is where we go to escape everything else. But then I get home and there's other people there. Well, now what do? We need to be okay with that. We need to invite that aspect in. Having dinners or just a night out with sojourners, people who we're trying to build those relationships with. Be intentional with that. Like make time, not just the time, but also budget-wise. Because going out to eat or preparing a meal for extra people can get expensive. Plan for that. Like that's the idea of this. Is it's not just on a whim, but it's very intentional throughout our entire life. Doing what you love with others. This one was like, when I read this one, I was like, well, I can do that. I can do that. For me personally, I love playing golf. I'm not good, but I love playing. And the idea of being able to go out on a golf course, if you haven't ever played golf before, what happens is you go out and you experience near 100% failure for 4 to 5 hours with just the occasional glimpse of absolute perfection. And that one moment of absolute perfection is like, well, I should just be able to do that every time. And it is absolute. But you're there for 4 to 5 hours. And depending on if you're in a tournament or whatever else, I mean, I've been on a course for 6.5 hours before. And if you're in a cart with someone for 6.5 hours, that's relationship building. It's not the greatest relationship building because, I mean, like after a while, you're like, why can't they just play faster? But you're there. Do the things that you love. We all have things that we love doing. Incorporate other people into our lives while we're doing those activities. Going out of your way to build relationships. This one's tough because it requires us to kind of like push aside whatever we had planned to like, okay, well, I was going to go, do this one thing, but what I really need to be doing is this. And it's just an intentional scrapping of plans in order to go be with people. And it doesn't even, it can be people that you intentionally are making plans with, or it can be someone that you are, if you're at a coffee shop and you just strike up a conversation, you're like, well, I'm supposed to be at this other thing right now, but like this is going really well, so I'm probably just going to not do the other thing. Let me shoot a text, tell them, hey, it's not happening, I'm doing something else, the end. Okay. And then looking for chances to talk. When I get home, I have a couple of neighbors that spend time outside. There used to be more, but it's cold right now, and so nobody goes outside. But we still, like our across the street neighbor, he's a contractor, and so he's just like constantly busy doing things outside always. And then our other neighbor has family over a lot, and he's outside quite a bit. And I am terrible about talking with them. I know their names, I know what they do, and that's about it. Ziana has pushed me a couple of times, like, hey, we've got to go get to know our neighbors better. We have to. And I'm always like, oh, okay, sure. Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. But she's 100% right. They're there. They're not going anywhere. They own those houses. Like, they live there. I've got to find opportunities. They're outside. Our neighbor that lives to our north, we've picked up mail for him a handful of times, and like I've talked with him outside, and we've done a few things together. You helped clean up his yard from the February ice disaster last year, and his name is Dylan, and he does some electronics work and sometimes goes to Germany for 3 months at a time for his job. I've just told you everything I know about Dylan. We've lived there. They moved in a couple of months after we did. So, we're at 3 years, and that's all I know. That is an absolute failure on my part. I have to do better. They're there. They're in my culture. They live next door to me. I have to do better. What are some things that will be hard to give up spending time connecting with people? Also, this is a real question that I want you guys to answer, but also feel free to interrupt me at any time. Really. If I say something that you hate, raise your hand and tell me that you hate it. If there's something that you love, tell me that too. That's awesome. What's going to be the hardest part? Yes, Daryl.
I was just going to say, we talk a lot about inviting, but we need to be ready to be invited. I've been surprised by how many community members have invited us into their space. And sometimes I feel guilty, like, man, I'm supposed to do that, or I should have invited them over first. And there can be some of that, but with COVID, things have kind of changed a little bit. But I've found people in our neighborhood are craving community. You know, guys inviting me over for lunch, wanting to talk about things, or we have another family inviting us to their Bible study, which they've started. So just I think we have to be available to invite, but we also need to be available to be invited.
Correct. Yes. Going also means at someone else's invitation. That's a great opportunity, because basically what they're doing is they're inviting you into their circle, which is one of the absolute goals that we have here. Yes, ma'am.
On that note, that sometimes you can invite people in, but don't expect to be invited back.
Sure.
Because that doesn't always happen.
We're gonna talk about the idea of loving with no strings attached at the end. Like, there's a lot of efforts that will go completely fruitless, and we've got to address that. Any other things that you guys want to talk about with leaving before we move on? And we go. Listening is watching and sensitively responding to the unspoken and spoken needs of sojourners in a way that demonstrates sincere interest. I, by nature, am a fixer. If you tell me your problem, let's fix it. I got it. We can do that. Let's go. Let's figure out what all the problems are, and let's go fix that. That's what I do. That's in my heart. After being married, I learned that sometimes you don't want my help. And that's not bad. She's never been mean about that, by the way. And we were actually talking about this morning. We were trying to come up with a specific instance. I remember the conversation, but I just don't remember the topic. But it was, hey, I need to tell you this, but I'm not telling you this for you to fix my problem. I'm just telling you this. Okay, I don't understand, but go. So we do that, and so now it's just a conversation. Sometimes when people are talking to you, they're not asking you to fix their problem. Very rarely have I had someone come to me and been like, I've got this life problem, and I think you're the one to fix it for me. I'm not that guy. But lots of people want to talk. And I think that we hit a level of, I know what's best for you, so as soon as you've told me your problem, I've got a solution. And that's for anybody, and I mean, like, it can be very close people, it can be people that we have casual relationships with, but we don't always fully listen to every aspect of it, because sometimes they're saying, please help me, please fix this problem. And a lot of times they're just saying, hey, I'd like to talk with you, and I'd like to give you a piece of me. And I want to dive further. And so not only are we can talk about the superficial things, but I want to tell you, I've got other things in my life too. And these are all of the aspects of it. And it might take a really long time to get through these, to get to the listening part, to the really listening part, because I can listen to strangers and I will take it at very face value. I don't know any better. Maybe your nonverbals are, you're telling me that you're happy, but you're crying while you're doing it, and so I'm confused. I don't know what you're wanting here. But sometimes, more often than not, fully understanding where a person is coming from, their entire paradigm, it takes time to build. What I wrote down here, and this is from the book, every person is unique in their experiences, traumatic moments, family background, ethnic heritage, and church experience, and those all make up how they interpret relationships and process faith and beliefs. It's impossible to get a full picture of somebody over a few hours. Relationships take this extra time to build. We've got to be listening the entire way, and occasionally you get to respond. This is for anybody that doesn't know this. If you're ever with someone who's ever going through traumatic things, whether it's a disease of their own or the loss of a loved one or loss of a job or whatever else, the best thing that you can do is sit there and keep your mouth shut, because you really probably aren't going to offer them anything that they haven't thought about or is going to be really constructive. I've had people come to me in some of my darker moments and offer the absolute worst advice. I mean, enough that even in the moment, like it was comical, like it was past like infuriating to laughable again. And I was like, whatever, I'm not even going to deal with you today. And so there's that. Listening is super important. Anybody want to add anything to listening before we move on?
I'd say listen to what they're saying. If they want to keep it superficial, that's one thing. But I've expected superficial conversations before with people I don't know real well, and they go deep. I'm like, why are you telling me this? And it catches me off guard, and I'm a little nervous. But I mean, I had that happen to me this week. The person just started pouring out something going on, and maybe it wasn't there for me to fix, but maybe they're saying, I need help. But someone can say, I need help, and you don't necessarily have to be the fixer, but you need to walk with them in that journey.
Correct.
And I think that's one of the worst things we can do is when someone says, I need help, and you're like, that really stinks for you. And you leave them alone, right? And so even if you're not the fixer, I see myself more like a paramedic a lot of times. I'm to get them where they need to go,
Right.
without letting them crash on the way.
Correct.
So.
Yes, sir.
There's also a temptation that if we're trying to minister or reach somebody or love somebody, that if they're struggling, we need to be strong and we need to be bulletproof. And if it's going to be a relationship and you aren't sharing what's real in your life, they will figure out that either they're weird or you're closed.
Or that this is a manipulation, that you're just trying to get them, like to suck them in and then we can get them to church. Like it becomes superficial on your behalf also. So, all right. Living among, and this is a fun one because we're going to start with a really easy question. Super easy, everybody. Everybody will have an answer to this, I know. It's right on the tip of your tongue, and that is, what is holiness? I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you guys, and you guys respond. What is holiness?
Being set apart.
Being set apart. Okay. What else is holiness?
Purity. Purity.
Purity. Good.
Being like God.
Being like God. Yes.
Having the mindset of Jesus, same thing.
Right. Yeah. I was expecting just like everybody to answer all at once. I wasn't expecting that. For so long, we've adopted the idea that holiness is an extraction and that we create a Christian peer pressure to move away from all the world in all its forms because the world is dark and dirty and intimidating and evil. This third habit of living among, it means participating in the natural activities of the culture around you with whimsical holiness. And if you say, did you say whimsical? Yeah, we're going to get to that. We're going to talk about that. I told Ziana I was going to talk about whimsy, and she goes, like, in what way? And I was like, well, because it's the, I got to read more. It was like I read it 2 or 3 times, told her I was going to do this, and still couldn't explain it because it's tough. Holiness, or the perceived holiness, is the elephant in the room that must be settled both theologically and practically. Jesus called us to be salt and light. Okay? Everybody agree with that? Everybody's read that part? We're all in agreement, salt and light. If I have a salt shaker in my hand and you have food, and I have decided to put that salt shaker in a different part of the room, then that salt does your food no good. If I have a light and I take it to a different house, that light does you no good. Living among means being in an intimate proximity with people no matter what's going on. Your holiness is not determined by where you are or who you're with. The scorekeeper in that is not other people. And I think sometimes we get, I said peer pressure, and I think that we get into this mindset of, well, if anybody saw me here, this would be really bad. We've got to move past that because that's where the people are. Doing bad things. Maybe they're not. I'm using that as the example here. Not everybody around the world is always doing bad things. So what activities can we participate in as a Christian? What are we allowed to do? And then Paul says, to the Jews I became like a Jew to win the Jews. To those under the law I became like one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, so as to win those under the law. To those not having a law I become like one not having the law, though I am not free from God's law, but under Christ's law, so as to win those not having the law. To the weak I became weak to win the weak. I've become all things to all people, so that I may save some. I do all this for the sake of the gospel, that I might share in its blessings. What activities are you allowed to be a part of? And it's all of them. Now, there's a very distinct line here between being around it and participating in, okay? There's a very clear line of what actual sin is. I don't want to skip over that. But being where people are doing things that are not necessarily approved of does not make you less holy, and it doesn't make you less of a Christian. Because if I remember correctly, Jesus went to where the sinners were. He didn't go to where the holy people were. And he met people where they were. And if we are following Christ and walking in Christ's steps, then we will also go to where the people are, regardless of what their situation is or what the circumstance around them is, no matter what. That was a big statement. What do you guys think about that? Yes, sir.
Recommend you take a partner with you when you tackle these type of projects.
Sure. Yeah.
Very important for support.
Yeah, accountability,
Very easy
support.
for a single individual to be overcome.
Right.
To be eased into something that, because they're trying to do something, being exposed to it, it just almost rubs off on them.
Right. And if you want to know what the point of Sunday morning is, when we all gather together, it's to keep aligned with the right things. Because it is easy to get caught into a culture and end up doing things that you might be against your conscience or very clearly bad. So, keep accountability. Yes, sir.
So, real life, I have a quandary.
Okay.
So,
Wait, do you want me to fix this or are you just telling me? Just kidding. Sorry.
well played.
Thank you.
So, I'm always looking for stuff that I can do with Jack. And there is, starting this spring, there's an autocross club that meets at Remington Park's parking lot, because it's a big parking lot, it's a great place to autocross, which is basically drive your car around the cones as fast as you can and don't break anything.
That sounds awesome.
Don't break anything. Anyway, but guess what? Over half of their meetings are on Sunday mornings. So I have friends that are in the autocross events that don't go to church. That's where they socialize. So I might have to think about if I want to connect with them, if I want to enter their space, if I want to have an influence, I may have to go, and that means I won't be here. And maybe somebody would go, wait a minute, one of our shepherds is skipping the assembly to go to an autocross event? And so so it's real. It's real when you make these types of decisions of where are you going to plug in.
Right.
Do I only make decisions on socializing with people or connecting with people or forming relationships with people that meet on Tuesdays when we don't have anything scheduled?
Right.
So my point isn't, and by the way, if you want to give me an answer, that's great. But my point isn't that we need to come up with some rules around this. My point is we need to struggle with it.
We do need to struggle with it, and also we need to drop that stigma that if you go on Sunday morning to be with this group of men, that you've done the wrong thing. Because for hundreds of years, that would have been the wrong thing. You know what I mean? Like church tradition says, you are here no matter what. And if you're not here, I don't care if you are dying. If you are not here, then you've messed up. And we've got to get past that. And you're the shepherd. I don't have an answer for you, but go.
Jim,
Yes.
we kind of have dealt with that same thing in our horse world.
Yes.
Because a lot of weekends are horse events.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we struggled with, because they're for the whole weekend. And we struggled with, how do we do that on Sundays? That they have a ride Sunday morning or something. So what we've chosen to do is take the church with us. And we've started a Sunday, they used to have it and then it died off. We rekindled having church service Sunday morning at the campground. And we put that together and help host that. And then we have it early in the morning so people can come and then they can go on and do the ride.
Right.
And so that way we feel like we're going out, living among the horse people, but we're bringing the church with us.
That is a quintessential example of this, because he talks about in the book, the church that they were at was meeting in a mall, and the place where they were meeting was closed off for some other reason, so they had to find another place to go, and so they went and met in the food court while the mall is open. And so they just did church with everybody just around them, but what it shows is, I am very willing to be in your circle, but I've got to bring this with me. This is a part of who I am, so much so that this will permeate everything that I do and who I am. Also, when you do that, you put yourself out there quite a bit, because then everybody watches. That person said they went to church on, they did church out here on Sunday morning. Is everything else living up to that? So, that's a tough spot to be in. You guys did it at the same time. Battle. Just kidding.
Well, I was just thinking of with the kids, what I've seen of being in the schools is a lot of people that come from church backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
They want to isolate their children to where they don't want their kids to see the world.
Right.
They want to protect them in a bubble, and I think that sometimes that's okay, but my thought is we need to engage our kids in those conversations, because at some point in their life, they're going to get out of the bubble. And if we can ever talk to them about things of the world, if they've never seen things in the world, they're not going to know how to react, I feel like. Or, I just think that would be a disservice. So anyway, I just think that that's kind of a tendency for a lot of church people to protect their kids so much at the cost that they don't see what's really happening. I don't know. Like, I just think for us personally, we've been able to have a lot of great conversations with our kids because of, you know, maybe it's homosexual relationships that are in their,
Sphere of influence.
Sphere,
Yeah.
you know, and that's okay, and it's not tainting them, it's not tempting them, it's just, it's real life, those things happen. And I think it can be good conversations, but I see too many people that I feel like don't want to have those conversations with their kids, so they just want to protect them.
Right.
And I think that could be a disservice.
I completely agree. We get, I think, the idea of, well, if I burden them with all of this, it makes them grow up too fast, and then they have to like start dealing with real life. And yeah. Yes, ma'am. Oh, Beth beat out Daryl this time.
I think a lot of times with like comfort, it's a big deal. And if we're with people that are sinners, quote unquote,
Mhm.
we worry about being seen as affirming of this or that.
Right.
So, you know, you think about the LGBTQ community. There's an article I read about moms that just went to these rallies and all they did was offer free hugs. You know, just said, anybody need a hug? I don't know if they were affirming or whatever, but, you know, I could do that. It doesn't mean that I affirm that lifestyle, but it does mean
Right.
that I see them as a creation of God, worthy of love.
Correct.
But, you know, I'm just gonna be honest, I pause and think, you know, well, what if somebody saw me down there? Then what are they gonna think? And then I have to have an elders meeting and this, you know, and all this kind of thing. But, I mean, that's my comfort, and that I shouldn't let people keep me from doing those kind of things. And I know what I think, and I know what I believe. But if we're only gonna be out and among people that we're comfortable with, we're never gonna scratch the surface of what we need to be doing.
Okay, yes.
I heard a really good example about salt one time, and it's just stuck with me, and has really kind of been a reminder, because I know it's hard when the world comes in and you want to protect your kids, but you also know they're in the best place for you to encourage them and talk to them and bring the Jesus aspect. But when Jesus was talking about salt, back in that time, they used salt, and they would use the salt to preserve the meat, but they would push the salt in. So the salt would go in instead of leaving and preserve it that way.
Mhm.
And so when the hard things come, what good is it if we go the opposite direction?
Right.
We need to go into those hard places and bring the light and bring, you know, Jesus to it.
Right.
So it's just, I'm seeing a lot of the trend of where Christians make their stance. They put their line in the sand so everybody knows where they stay or where they're at, and then that's breaking all opportunities for anybody who feels differently to ever get to know what they know about Jesus.
That's great. Yes, sir.
I'm gonna play the old guy.
Yes.
I think it's good to make contact, but I think you have to be careful how far your participation goes.
Right,
And
right.
it's a very fine line, and everything that's said about the intentions of what's being done is great. But if you have to watch the participation, if it becomes a habit, you're spending that time, you're liable to go get more involved. And someone says, well, you're not, Randy, you're not in with what's going on. I feel that there could be a danger of being, as I said earlier, being overtaken by it.
Sure.
And next thing you know, it's one thing to go and Daryl had a good suggestion of meeting with these people and expressing your concern for them. It's another to be walking down the street parading with them.
Right.
And
It's
difficult.
it is a
It's
fine
difficult.
line.
You
That's
don't-
true.
You don't want to ignore a soul.
Right.
But you have to watch out the point of what you're doing, because you can be brought in just as well as anyone can.
Right.
And then the problems start.
Yep. Yes.
Well, we were talking about going with the sinners like Jesus did, but you don't go to a bar and teach them because they're not ready for it. So sometimes you have to make the signal or watch the signals that they're probably ready when they're drunk, because they're saying, oh, I'm sorry, you know, like, I did this and everything. But
Mhm.
I don't know if it would be sincere or not. I'm not the judge, but you try to watch out for people that are like that, or maybe when you're sober, I don't know.
Sure. Yes, sir.
My boys grew up in a time period where if you wanted them to be involved in sports, culture was transitioning from Sunday morning being sacred in the youth sports world to not being sacred time in the youth sports world. And I always struggled with that because, like you, I grew up in a home where you were there when the doors were open. But when I was the coach,
Right.
you needed to be there for the kids and for the parents of the kids. And so I grew up in the home where when we drove by the golf course on the way to church on Sunday morning, we were pointing and looking at look at those centers over there on the other side of that fence. But so I struggled personally with that. So to wrestle with that in my mind and defeat that struggle, it was, I'm going to bring Christ to this team.
Right.
We are going to pray before every game, whether it's on Tuesday night or whether it's on Sunday morning. If it is on Sunday, we're going to spend, and we're in the ballpark all day long, at some point, we're going to sit down and talk about some spiritual experience that took place
Sure.
on the field, or interject Jesus or God into that event somewhere during that day. That's the way I struggle with it. I don't think we're necessarily talking about going and hanging out at a brothel here. We're talking about being with our culture in places where they are and taking Jesus into that event.
Correct.
Or into that place.
Correct. Also, saying that you can be other places besides here on a Sunday morning doesn't, like, that's not sleeping in. Like, that doesn't count. I got to put that caveat in here. Also, I've got to move on. I've got 3.5 minutes left, and I've got another habit and 2 more slides. So I want to quickly read this. I said I would come back to whimsy, and I'm just going to read what the author wrote here. It said, "You might be wondering if the people we're living among occasionally go too far, or if things get out of control when we're among a celebration of life or good food and wine. Of course, that's why we included our definition of living among with the word whimsy. Whimsy is the ability to laugh, make light of, or downplay the words, behaviors, and worldview of sojourners that might offend us. Whimsy is deeply tied to our discussion of posture, as we remember that behavior doesn't change until the heart changes. Whimsy, therefore, allows you to be with people regardless of their angle of life without casting any judgment. It paves the way for them to feel comfortable enough to be themselves, feel loved and dignified as human beings. It's not making an issue out of anything that's not the main issue. That simply means we don't flinch at sin or bad language or nasty t-shirts or crude music or a sojourner who overindulged. Whimsy may be the missing element of Christ-like love in today's world. It's the essence of missional posture that helps gain someone's heart to that someday their behavior may change." Me being in your world doesn't mean that I like taking part in your world. And I also don't have to be offended at the things that you do and say. If we had someone who wasn't affiliated with any church in any way come in here and they used bad language occasionally in this room, there'd be people who'd be like, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe that he's doing that in here." And then why would he be any different? Like he's not in the group. Like he's not following this way. Like of course, like they're probably we're not holding outsiders to the standard of the insiders. Okay. I don't know if everybody wants to say something about that, but you don't get a chance. Loving without strings. This one seems really easy. This is the easiest to grasp mentally and probably the hardest to do practically. He talks a lot about being a blessing. Loving without strings means being a blessing. That is just giving without the idea of receiving back in. Blessing is more than a passing wish for someone's well-being. It calls for action on our part to give out even when nothing can be returned. You can't just say thoughts and prayers are with you. Go actually do something about that. And you might think, "Hey, Jeff, I have limited time. I'm super busy. If I only have a few minutes to influence someone, shouldn't I just cut to the chase and tell them about God?" And if you're asking that question, no. No, that's not loving with no strings attached. Loving with no strings attached means loving. There's just a period. Period. In the New Testament, we have Jesus fed people, 4,000 people, then 5,000 people. And what we don't read in here is the invitation that he gave at the very end, where now that you've participated in this meal with us, come forward as we stand and all 5,000 of us sing. The quick counter argument that I thought of immediately was, yeah, but I mean, like, you just witnessed Jesus perform this incredible miracle. And then my answer to that is, if you're a blessing in someone's life that actually needs it at that time, you may be performing to what them seems like a miracle. Whether it's just being with them or financially helping someone, you can be a miracle in someone's life without it being a Jesus-ordained miracle. I mean, like you're not literally walking on water, but you can do things that change people's life that are a blessing to them. And we are to be a blessing to people around us. And let it speak for itself. If your blessing to someone didn't influence someone to come and be a Christ follower, then that's okay. Because conversion is not your job. My job was to plant the seeds, and sometimes that's with saying something about Jesus or God or church, and sometimes it's not. Because maybe it's my seed that gets put with a couple of other seeds that other people do that lead someone to question other life decisions and lead people down different paths. My job is to be a blessing to people regardless.
We may never know this side of heaven.
That's it.
Little touches.
That's it.
Yeah.
We have to be okay with that. Like, that's a hard one. I did 2 different 6-week mission trips overseas. I went to Croatia and then to Thailand. It was tough because, like, 6 weeks sounds like a long time. 6 weeks is no amount of time at all. Like, it's just a blip. And like, there are people there that I will forever wonder, hey, did I make any difference at all in their life? And I have to just be okay with that. Yes.
One easy way to say it is it's our job to open a line of communication.
Mm-hmm.
It's not our job to ask for a decision.
Correct.
And I think so many times we go, wait a minute, I'm having this discussion or this interaction with somebody. I need to ask a question that brings them to a point of making a decision of whether they want to go further or not.
Right.
No, our job is to open a line of communication.
Yes.
And hope that that stays open, whether with us or with somebody else in the future.
Living out these steps, or living out these habits, are not steps to evangelism. Okay? That is very important. These are the habits of a Christ follower who wants to live faithfully like Christ did. Now, each of these 4 habits has an opposition. Selfishness is the enemy of leaving, because it's a lot easier for me to be in my own bubble and do all the things that I want to do instead of stepping out and going. Fear is the enemy of living among, because my fear of other people and being in their circumstances and their situations can be overwhelming. Arrogance is the enemy of listening. I told you guys that I was ready to fix all the problems because I knew what was best for whatever this problem was. I can fix that, and that is not it. Listening or arrogance cannot be any part of listening. And expectations are the enemy of loving, because when I love with expectation, what John just said, I'm expecting an answer. I'm doing this so that you will do this, which is in no part of the Bible. That is my class this morning. We're 4.5 minutes over. Does anybody want to have a parting thought, or are we just, I guess we're probably done since we've got to start in 10 minutes. All right. Hey, thank you guys. Class is dismissed. We'll see you in a little bit.